Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Greg Crino Show. Welcome, everyone, to the Greg Crino Show, where we talk to experts and people with unique experiences so we can learn something and become better critical thinkers. In today's episode, we have refugee turned U.S. Air Force veteran Pitman Kennedy. Pittman was born in Liberia, West Africa, and had to escape because of a civil war in which he was nearly executed. He has since retired from the Air Force. He is pursuing his Doctor of Education, and he heads the youth basketball and development organization called Sweat Equity Leadership Development. He also authored a book called Audacity of Resilience, which you can buy on Amazon. Pitman Kennedy is an incredible guy, and he can be reached at sweatequityleadership.com. So here he is. Pitman Kennedy, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's the day after Thanksgiving. It's an amazing time. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on as well. And I am just getting over my turkey coma right now. So I'm awake. I've got my coffee. And I'm excited to hear about your life.
Man.
There's so much that we can go into. You were a refugee from Liberia and Sierra Leone. You emigrated to the U.S., joined the Air Force. You retired Air Force Master Sergeant, and you're also an author. You wrote the book called Audacity of Resilience, just came out in June of 2020. And you're also leading the program called Sweat Equity Leadership Development for kids and teaching them sports and leadership. So you've done a ton of stuff. And when people have done all these things, I don't know where to begin, so I'll just start at the beginning. So just tell me about your childhood and your time in Africa, because you were there when it was a civil war. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed. You had to flee. Can you just go through your childhood? How was it with your growing up and your family? And then how did you finally get out of there? Just describe that for us if you could.
Yes, well, so I don't know how much of Liberia. So Liberia was formed when colonized by the American Colonization Society. And most of that group was of folks that returned from the United States over here as slaves, years before my grandfathers were born. So I was born and raised in Liberia, went to school, and life was somewhat normal up until my high school years when the insurgents took place in the form of a civil war. And rebel forces embarked in Liberia. I was in high school. I didn't have the chance to graduate at that time because we had to escape our home in fear of us staying alive. So we walked out of our homes with very little belongings, with hope of coming back, hoping that the war was going to end at some point in time, not too long. But that time never came. So we kept walking out of Liberia and using the villages and the by roads to get through, and ended up in Sierra Leone. During that journey, I was arrested by the rebel forces because I had a wristwatch that had a picture of the former president, Samuel Doe, that was subsequently executed in his own form. So they arrested me and put the barrel of the gun to my head and tried to execute me for that watch. But fortunately, they released me because my family members begged. But they released me and allowed us to leave for Sierra Leone. So we entered Sierra Leone and stayed there as refugees for the next year and a half or so before I was fortunately relocated to the United States and then started on my next chapter of my life.
So real quick, can I just back up? The reason that they arrested you was because you were wearing a watch of the president that those folks did not like. Was that the source there?
Yes.
It was just they felt that you were supporting the wrong side, and that was almost worth executing you over?
Yes. You got to realize that these folks, they were the rebels at the time. They were based on tribalism and affiliation. And because what they would do during the time of, we would go to these villages, and wherever village you ended in at dusk, dawn, is where you would sleep. So what they would do, they would raid these villages and bring out the people and look for marks on their legs or their head for their hat. So if you were in the military, you would have marks on the boots from wearing your boots every day. So if they saw marks that looked similar to those of soldiers, because soldiers were escaping themselves, disguising themselves and running out of there for safety. So they would raid these villages and bring everybody outside and look for these traits on us. And if they determined that you were a former soldier or you were affiliated with the government, you were subject to being executed. So any type of connection rendered you vulnerable at the time for execution. In my case, I was a young, 16-year-old at the time. They didn't have no clue about how catastrophic or risk watch would have been to my life. So I carried a watch, and when they saw it in our search, yeah, they pulled me to the side and put me in a little jail cell, and then attempted to execute me.
So why did they not? Did they tell you this boy's too young, we shouldn't bother? The fact that they're executing other people for such small things, I'm surprised they didn't do the same thing to you, and I'm obviously glad they didn't. That's insane. Why did they let you go?
It came down to the matter of my siblings crying and begging and pleading that, hey, he's innocent. We are not related to the government. We're not connected. And repeatedly. And then eventually, I won't say torture, but they pushed me around a little bit, smacked my head a couple of times, and pushed me from wall to wall, those types of things. And finally, in acquiesce, they allowed me to leave.
Oh, my God. Now, what was the reason for the conflict? You said tribalism in general, but was there any particular policy or one major issue, or was it simply this tribe wanted control and this tribe, they just wanted control and that was it? Was there any big primary disagreement? Was it religious? Was it something else? Can you put your finger on it?
It was a combination. Yeah, it was a combination of different things. The natives felt oppressed by American Liberians, which are the folks that are repatriated to Liberia from the United States. So it was, remember, Liberia independence was back in 1847. So at that time, it was a form of the American Liberians ruled the country over those years as far as being president and government officials. So the natives felt oppressed. They felt like they were mistreated. They felt there was corruption and a whole lot of types of injustices, or so to speak. So it gave birth to a revolution. And unfortunately, it killed 250,000 folks. About 250,000 or so people lost their lives. And the war lasted for at least about 16 years, 15 years.
Did your family support any particular side? Did they have to keep it a secret, or were they neutral? How did they feel?
No, we were neutral for the most part. My dad did not work in the government. We knew people. Liberia is a small country, so most of the time people know one another. So it wasn't really a matter of supporting, it was just a matter of being a casualty of the atrocities or the war. There was a call for change. The people needed change at the time, but I'm not sure if the people understood the cost of that change that they so much desire. So it's a delicate, up till now, it's still a delicate issue based on what background you came from, what tribe you were affiliated with. Some people have let it go, but others are still hurt. There's still a call for justice and accountability because you lost 250,000 people, and some of those people were murdered and executed in real time.
And which side ended up winning in that conflict? Was there any resolution toward the end? Because they're not at war now. What eventually happened?
So eventually, the rebel leader Charles Taylor eventually took over. And what happened was when Charles Taylor he had gained so much momentum, and he controlled up to 90+% of the country, except the city of Monrovia, the capital city where the President Samuel Doe was. So just before he took complete control of the city, he broke up with his second in command, Prince Johnson. So that escalated the war because when Johnson broke away, he took some soldiers with him as well. So you had Taylor forces, you had Johnson forces, you had Samuel Doe, the government forces, and then you had the peacekeeping forces from West Africa that are also converged to help the situation. So that lasted for a few years, and then eventually Charles Taylor became the president. But Charles Taylor is in prison right now for war crimes. So Charles Taylor took over, and then years after that, it was unrest, and it was that military leadership, and then he was forced to leave Liberia, and then they went through a couple of interim governments, and we had some type of stability for the last 12 to 15 years or so because Ellen Johnson Sirleaf came through and won the first election, did a 6-year term, did a second 6-year, and then now we have George Weah as the president for the last 3 years.
Okay. And do you still keep track of your family in those countries? Is your family mostly in Liberia or Sierra Leone? Or
when we escaped as a unit, and we walked over to Sierra Leone. So my father led the group at the time. He's since passed away over here. We all came to the United States in 1992. I went to Liberia for the first time in 30 years in April. That was the first time I went back.
Oh, wow. How was that?
It was completely different. It's indescribable for the most part. Things have changed. The country is still struggling to get back on track.
Yeah. Is it more developed? I imagine it's more developed now. Do you have hope for that area? Do you think that it's going to continue to improve? What do you think?
Liberians we hope that it improves. It hasn't developed. When you go through a war for that amount of years, it causes a setback in all areas. You talk about the general infrastructure, the healthcare system, the educational system, just name it, and it needs help. Everything needs help. They're trying to recover. And one thing that I don't want to get into politics, but one thing that's been on the airwaves is that corruption. And the government being called out for corruption, but it's not limited to the current government. I think corruption in Liberia had been historic.
Yeah, is there any particular issue that is common in Liberia that comes up election after election, or is it just a general corruption problem? Like, is there any one? Is it, say, water, or is it trade? Is it taxes? Like, is there any particular issue that you can say, hey, if we solve this, then things would improve dramatically? Or is it just so many different things that you can't really put your finger on it?
Yeah. So let me preference that response with my position. So personally, I just listen. I'm not involved in any kind of way, but just from listening, because I was born in Liberia and I have friends and family members that are Liberian, and I do listen just to stay informed of what's going on. If you were to ask me one thing that I think would enhance any kind of growth and development is pretty much awareness and education of the people. And the reason I say that, because that is the umbrella that everything subsides underneath. I feel like if the people are aware and educated and well informed as to how to select leaders and their agendas and decipher between the leaders' agendas, then they will make the right decision for the right leadership. Up until that, the people are going to be swayed because the people live in abject poverty. And because they live in such a poor state, they're easily influenced, and to the tune of where you can really influence a person's vote by just buying them a meal, giving them some rice and some oil and some meat, and you can probably get their vote. So you don't win. You may win the election, but the country don't win because they may not be voting for the right candidate. That's how I understand it.
And what lessons did you take from that? So you left there when you were, I think, 17, and looking back, what can you learn from it, like a personal experience perspective? Like when you are teaching your leadership development programs, was there any big lesson that you took out of that experience that you can relate to?
My number one lesson is giving hope, realistic hope to the future generation, the young people. So my efforts and my work, my purpose now as I speak to it, is about helping the young people, because I feel like if we help the young people, whether it's individually or collectively, we give them hope. But then you ask me what is helping them is to use myself as an example, as a beacon of hope, to let the young people know that, hey, me too, I was once in your shoes, and if you stay hopeful and keep working hard and doing the right thing, your time is going to come where you're going to be instrument of success. And I use success very carefully. When I say success, I mean a person that knows where he or she is going, knows their purpose, and is actually active in bringing others along. That's my purpose. That in itself makes me successful. So my number one at top my priority is making a difference in the lives of the young people. And I feel like that difference cannot be limited by political lines or tribal lines. Is if I want to give $100 to one young child or young family, then I can do that. And I do not have to go through any kind of political boundaries to do. So that's the one lesson and one challenge and charge that I have for myself and my effort.
Good. That's fantastic. So then, wow. So then you come to the United States, and did you initially want to join the military, or was that something that you found out about later? What were your goals when initially came to the U.S.?
So before we left Liberia, when the war would get bad, or when they were fighting would get bad, we will run for refuge to the United States Embassy compound. They had a compound. So when we would go to that compound, was guarded by Marines, and the Marines were professionally dressed. They were just on top of this stuff, mannered, sharp, and very impressionable. So I drew from that, but it was a far thought. It was an afterthought that I would come to realize that dream at some point in time. So I kept that in mind, but keep in mind that at that time, our number one priority was survival, because you were watching people
Right.
getting killed by stray bullets. So you didn't know if tomorrow you were going to see tomorrow. But that thought, that strike a thought in my mind. So fast forward to after Sierra Leone, when we were moving to the United States, during the plane ride, we went from Freetown to Amsterdam. And then from Amsterdam, we will fly into New York. So during that flight from Amsterdam to New York, I met another guy that was in the Air Force. He was either coming home for vacation or leave or something. So he was nice enough to have a conversation with me, being a young man as a refugee, first time coming to the United States. We talked a little bit, and I realized that he was in the Air Force. So that that was the second mark in my mind about the military. So I arrived in the United States, and again, I came into the United States just as I was at the time. So I was looking for a new life, a new chapter, still young at the time, maybe 19 years old, and trying to find my direction, my path. And once I got hold of myself, I tried to join the Army right away. At first encounter, the recruiter at the time told me that I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't smart enough to join the Army, and I'll be lucky if I get in a community college. She wasn't privy to my journey, to where I have come from, the circumstances and the challenges. So in a nutshell, she prejudged me based on what I presented to her at face value. So what that did was that kind of invoked a light that still burns today, that I'm going to prove everything that you said wrong, because I'm at my abilities and my capabilities. So I went on and got a GED, because I didn't graduate in Liberia, due to the war. So after having lived in Sierra Leone for 2 years, I have fallen behind. And I was about to hit 20 years old. So I had to get back on track. And the GED was the way. So I got my GED. And then I stuck in the library for a little bit until I prepared myself for the SATs, took the SATs, and got enrolled in the University of Houston. And I spent 3 semesters there, and then I still was driven to go the direction of the military. So I remember that afternoon I walked into the recruiting station, still haven't decided which branch I was going to join. I met the Air Force recruiter. He was on his way out going to lunch. It was in the afternoon, and he came back in the office with me, gave me a test on his desk. I took the test, and the rest was history. Got a call back that said that you're going to be scheduled for your ASVAB, which is the Army, the requirement test, the qualifying test for the Air Force. So I took the ASVAB. My scores were good enough. I needed my GED, and I needed some college credits to accompany those GED hours. I needed some college credits to accompany the GED, which I had accumulated over the last 3 semesters. So I was ready, and I was given the opportunity to join the Air Force. And I can tell you that's the best thing that happened to me.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So it seemed like it was the Marines at the embassy initially who were your sort of your face of the United States. And then once you got out, went to the U.S., then the military seemed like the way to go. Yeah, we have to look at the background of the person. And when we're assessing whether they should come into the military, and people have just incredible stories, and yours is one of the top ones that I've ever heard. That's amazing, man. So you get in the military, and were your thoughts, hey, I'm going to just be here for a few years? Did you think I'm going to make a career out of it? It seemed like initially it was just, you're just trying to survive. And I don't blame you. I mean, you're a young kid. And to even think 20 years down the road probably is a fantasy. So were you just thinking, hey, year by year, just survive? Or at what point were you thinking, hey, I want to make a career out of this?
Man, my thoughts were overwhelming at the time. When you faced with a situation where you felt like life had put you back a few years, it's like, where do I start? But you could sense that there was hope because you were in these United States where hope is revived and renewed. So at the point in time, I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay in the military. I know one thing was my priority was education. I needed to get, I wanted to get a good education. That was one thing. And the military was provided that as another benefit. So travel was good, but I wanted education. So when I joined the military, it was like a huge win for me at the time. I was like, wow, I'm going to do everything with this. So interestingly, when I got my first assignment, it was over in Nebraska, off of Air Force Base. And that was my first time coming in contact with actual snow. It was in February when I arrived, and I worked in medical records in a medical facility. And I was so excited. I always tell people this about being in the military, that when we had an overload of records, they would ask us to come in on Saturdays. And I would be so excited to come in. I'll be the first one there. I have my son at the time. I would bring him in, and my wife would come in. And I just would do it. You told me clean the restrooms, I was going to be excited because I just felt like it was just so much great opportunity that lie ahead. And my attitude towards that was so positive. And I found that positive attitude had transcended different levels of elevation for me. So I had the right attitude, and I was equipped with that, and that helped me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was excited.
See, we need more people like you to join the military because we need that excitement. Like you said, it's infectious, and we get so wrapped up in our daily lives, and it's mundane, and we're always looking at somebody who's got it better, and then we get depressed, and then in comes a guy like you that's, God damn it, I want to go clean some toilets. I'm so happy to be here. I got 3 square meals a day. I've got a roof over my head. I'm not getting shot at. It's just, it's amazing how people's experiences can just shape their attitudes. And I like what you had said earlier, how your initial goal was just to get educated, just to make yourself smarter. And it seems of a broad statement when you say we just need to make everybody educated and smart, but it really is. It starts with that, and once you have that, then you have hope, and then you can make better decisions. But you have to have that internal drive and excitement. And I don't know where that comes from. It seems like you have it naturally, but I do know that people like you need to be out there more because it is infectious. Whoever has it, however you get it, doesn't really matter. But once you have it, you got to get it out there and express it and get people like you to join and be around the rest of us. Because, damn, I'm excited right now. I might go clean my house today. I don't know. I'm going to.
I think, again, I said earlier, it comes down to your attitude. I found that our attitudes are our passports, and they represent us, but even to a greater length than we even imagine, because what our attitude allows us to give out is what we're going to in turn receive. One thing I have found that I think that my journey and my experience, because you see, when you are faced with a setback, you have 2 choices, really 2. You can sit back and blame everything around you for those setbacks, or you can figure out how to make the next hour, the next day, the next week better. Because the thing is, once we are alive, we have hope. And once you have hope, you can manifest anything you want. That's within reason. but it's where everything starts. That's one of the reasons why I said earlier that if we educate our young people on certain things, they're going to make the right decisions, because it's so easy to place the blame on external sources. But a lot of times we are limited on changing external sources without invoking change within ourselves.
Mm.
And it's not a real hard lesson. Nobody really taught me. It's just my experiences that kind of led me to look in the mirror every day. It's not to say I don't have bad days. People seldom know when I have bad days, because as long as I'm on my 2 feet, I feel like I've been blessed that day. I can do incredible things.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're limited on how much we can control external sources, and we're not limited on how much we can control our own situation and our own attitude. And you also, did you say this? Our attitude is our passport. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I've never heard that before. Our attitude is our passport. I'm gonna put that up somewhere, and I'll credit you. So that's going to go somewhere.
Thank you.
Well, great, man. So you did end up doing 20 years then. So was it just along the way you just decided, hey, I'm going to take one more assignment at a time, and each one led to the next, and then eventually you did 20 and retired? So it was a slow process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually 21.
Okay.
But so here's the thing, and I may be biased to this, but I think I'm really honest. I think we live in the greatest countries in the world today because we have the greatest military in the world. And I think because we have it as Americans, sometimes people tend to underplay or take it for granted. But it's the sacrifices and the service of the great men and women that came before me that even made it possible for me to join the military, and for us all to experience and enjoy the freedom. And the reason I start with that, because that gives segue to the next point to answer your question, is that the experience that I had in my first 4 years of assignment, it was a no-brainer at the end of 4 years that I was going to do the next. Because first of all, when we talk leadership, the Air Force really put that at a practical premium, leadership. So the folks that were there before me brought me along. So once you get there, you feel like you had a debt to pay. So you got to be looking for the next young airman that comes through, so you can be an impact on their lives. So it is natural. Again, coming from where I came from, there were certain things that to me that were high value items: discipline, accountability. Those things, I needed more of that, because to whom much is given, much is expected. So the efforts were developing me. They were providing the means for me to get a good education without coming out of my own pockets. So that was a high premium item as well. And that's just the way of life, the way of life. So when I left the Air Force, till this day, I'm equipped with so much of valuable traits that I almost feel like I can survive anywhere in this world because of what the Air Force have developed and cultivated in me: leadership, accountability, taking care of people. It's not just about you, but it's about the person that represents you. So my primary focus is not on me. It's about making a difference on the next person. Yeah, that's why that's one of the reasons it was a no-brainer for me that I was going to stay.
I think you present a good picture there, that the face of the military often is not the equipment or the destructive power that the military brings, although that's very important because we have to have that to defend ourselves and defend our allies and accomplish the mission. But 95% of the time, it's just the human face. And for you, it was those Marines at the embassy. And they were professional, they looked sharp, they acted sharp, and they made you want to join our team. And now we've got a fantastic asset. So there's the hard power of the bombs and the bullets and the technology, and then there's that soft power of just the face and the attitude and the professionalism. So I think that's something we need to beat into our heads as much. And then after retirement, you started the Sweat Equity Leadership Development Program. Can you go through why you did that and just how that's going?
Yes, it started with a combination of different things. One, my passion for sports, specifically basketball and soccer. I played when I was young, and then also the leadership aspect that the Air Force had taught me over the years, which kind of lends itself to developing young people. So my son Isaiah played basketball, and I used to coach soccer and basketball at the youth centers throughout my Air Force career. I was always coaching on a voluntary basis. So as I got closer to retirement, I started working with Isaiah personally on his skill development individually. And then soon thereafter, started working with his friends. And then it occurred to me that I should formulate this into an organization. So it started with basketball and then developing youth. So then I started attending development seminars that was catered towards basketball development coaches. And then I drove it into a business, an LLC. So then I extended the focus to leadership. I brought in the leadership aspect, and I felt that basketball was a means or tool that you could use to provide holistic development for young people. In other words, you can use basketball as a means to connect, and while you are working on basketball skills with young people, you can place in their leadership, attitude, the same things that I emulate, academics, those types of things. So it provided a holistic platform for me to develop people. So even though you come to me for basketball, you leave an entire better person because everything else I make sure I pay attention. So for example, if I was working with a young athlete today, I'm paying attention to the way they respond to their parents and on a side by side communication. I pay attention to the academics. I want to know what their grades are looking. I want to know what their attitude looks like, what their work ethic looks like, because I want to prepare them for success, not only in sports, but in life as a whole.
Nice. And so when they sign up for your program, what kind of programs do you have available? Is it one size fits all? Do you have specific type of tracks? Is it based on amount of time? Is it for a week or a month? Or how do you initially place somebody when they come to you saying, hey, I want to join your program. I want to learn how to play basketball. Kind of describe the process and what you present to them initially.
Yeah, so initially when they come in, they want to get better at basketball. And their skill and ability levels are different. And their goals are also different as well. So basically, I do an initial evaluation. I speak with the parents, I speak with the athlete, and see what it is that they want. So you have some real high level athletes that are going to be college bound and probably may end up being a pro. And then you have some athletes that just want some type of self confidence. They feel if I can get better at something, then I can improve in other areas of my life. So it's important that we do an initial analysis. So it varies. There's kids that want to work out one time a week for an hour. There are kids that want to work out 3 times a week for an hour. There are programs that have 10, 15, 20 kids that I also contract with and are making an appearance once a night for the parent, once a week for a parent for their program and work with those young kids. So it differs, but the focus is always the same as far as developing them holistically. And then sometimes you build these relationships to where they last beyond the actual contract itself. You keep the relationship going. You get called when parents are asking you to be part of their decision making process as they select colleges for the athletes. And they want you to be part of graduation ceremonies. They want you to be part of those significant highlights of their kids' lives. So that's where the reward comes in when you build a relationship and they can reach back to you to tell you that, hey, you are part of this journey, so I want you to participate.
About how old are these kids? What are the age ranges?
On the younger end, I have 8-year-olds, maybe 7. Maybe there's a kid that one or two kids at 7, and then I got athletes that's already in college, sophomores, juniors in college.
You have a very large range of kids then, and then about how many kids are in your program at any one time?
Right now, I can tell you that I probably have access to maybe 40, between 40 and 50. Actually, it might be a little more than that. And the reason I say that is because I have some individual kids, athletes that I work with. And then I have programs that have athletes that I've been working with for 3 years. I've seen kids go from 4th grade to 7th, 8th grade because I just moved to San Antonio, Texas in 2018. Prior to that, I was in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio. So I started off sweat equity in Ohio, and then I had to move because I still work for the Air Force as a civilian. So when I moved down here, it was driven by my employment. So I had to restart the business because I had to build a brand new clientele. But the numbers have tripled compared to what I had in Ohio since I got down here over the last 3 years. And so to answer the earlier question about our focus areas, so we also do athlete development forum. This is a 4 to 6 hour seminar where we don't touch basketball. We just talk about those other things that help you become a better person, a better student athlete. So we sit there and we give the athlete opportunity to come up and present different ideas on what makes them better. That we acknowledge the exceptional academic performers. We acknowledge the exceptional character of athletes with exceptional character, work ethic, those types of things, and a form to encourage and develop them. Because the best form of encouragement is motivation.
How big's your staff? Do you have a few coaches that you work with?
Yes, it's about 3 of us right now. I work in partnership with a guy called Eric Talley that owns his own program in itself. But we work a merger where I come into his program and we work together and I help develop his young athletes. And then another guy called Steve Marshall. So it's the 3 of us right now that's running ship. So I'm active every night with the development aspect of it. And in April, when I went to Liberia, I did a clinic over there as well. So I had about 38 kids that I just provided skill development training for. But when I went to Liberia, that was just something that my company provided because, again, the young people in Liberia need that. But because of the socioeconomic status, sometimes affording such programs can be beyond their means and their reach. So when I go back, I'm heading back to Liberia in December. And part of the plan is to also do another session of player development training and clinics, and also trying to do something for the young people, like a holiday party or something for them.
Yeah, that would be great. Now, when you talk to the kids in Liberia, what sort of things do they ask you? Do they ask you about America? Do they ask you about your time growing up in Africa? What are their big concerns?
How can they get to where I'm at? So when I went in April,
okay.
and when I went in April, that's a great question. In fact, that's what really drives me. So when I went in April, again, I was just going to go home for the first time. I hadn't been home in 30 years. But because of people that I went to school with when I was young, once they knew that I was there, I got 3 requests to speak to 3 different schools to the young people. And man, that was, I don't know I cannot describe my experience, but it almost like there was unequivocal thirst for what I had to offer. There was a level of excitement. They were focused, and because it's about relatability. You got to be able to relate. And the fact that I was one of them before that presented that the attention demanded, and I had that attention. But to speak to the questions being asked again, how do they get here, and what my experiences were. How did I leave? What propelled me to leave? Because a lot of these young people, they weren't privy to the war and what went on, so they have to be educated. So they wanted to know what happened, how I ended up in the United States, what the Air Force looks like, and what just a basic way of life looks like. And then on the athletic side, there's a whole bunch of young people that are looking for hope and to see how athletics can propel their opportunities for the future. So I'm developing a program right now to talk to the young people. This is separate, it's independent of any athletic. It's just talking to the young people to let them know this is when I go back. I want them to understand that because I told you earlier that they need to be educated and informed. So my talk to these young people when I go back is to make sure that they are focusing on trying to get themselves in school and stay focused and prepare themselves for that day when the opportunity presents itself so they too can hold on to it, latch on and become better people and remind them that I was in these very shoes at some point in time in my life. So you can do it too. And that's going to be my charge for the next years to come. Every year I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to these young people and keep encouraging them and provide some type of resources for them as well to help them stay hopeful.
And what sort of things do they want to do? So you said that they want to get to where you are. Is there any sort of specific career goals that they have, or do they have family goals? Do they have travel goals? Like, what sort of things do they specifically want to do other than, or is it mostly athletics? Are there any other career fields that they tend to ask about, or can you get a little more specific about what they want?
They want a better life. They want assurance that they can eat 3 times a day at least, like we do over here for the most part. So the charge is to start to channel their focus in a direction, because right now it's not focused. Okay, but I will tell you this: what mesmerized me was they are so intelligent, they are bright. It's like you got all this a young person's mind is so populated with greatness, but they're not channeled in no direction. So and it interrupted because they're hungry. They probably don't have breakfast. So if you do a camp down there or clinic, you also got to think about what are they going to eat for dinner after the clinic that you're providing for them. So you got to incorporate that as well into your plan. You can't just go talk to a whole bunch of empty, hungry stomachs and expect that they're going to retain. So it's trying to channel their focus to say, look, first of all, how can I help you with with formulating your future plans, or developing that mindset that you want to become somebody. And becoming somebody doesn't really mean they have to leave Liberia, because there's hope that Liberia is going to get better. But it also means that at least they should have a plan, a solid plan, and they should focus and work towards the plan. Because if we don't do that, guess what? They become young traders, and they'll start selling, for instance, plastic bags in the market. They'll sell plastic bags, and they will grow up selling plastic bags all through the adolescent years. And then they miss the opportunity of going in the classroom, because if you ask them, they can't really see the value of the formal education at that young age, because it's not real tangible to them. So you got to create that connection to say, no, there is value here. And that's a challenge that I got to deal with.
So they sell plastic bags. That's something that happens. Wow, I never even thought of that being a market. So there's actually like a plastic bag selling deal that they do, that they need people to sell bags.
When you go to the market, like the market similar to the farmer market, outdoor market for the most part. Back there, they go to the market every day before they cook. Because again, the economy is so bad that not everybody have electricity, so you can't preserve your food in the freezer. Yeah, so a lot of these people eat fresh daily meals. So you go to the market today and you cook today, and tomorrow you do it all over again. So when they go to the market, part of what some of the young people do, and I applaud them for that, and that really touches my heart. They will sell plastic bags that people will buy from them to put a market in, their goods in, their groceries in. So some kids do that to make an honest living for themselves, to find the next meal, or to help someone else eat in their family. So they start off early. I'm talking about 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And the fact that they are not in the classroom, it really troubles me. And that's why I said top my priority is making a difference in that group of young people's lives.
Is reading a skill that most kids have, or is it pretty rare?
Some of the kids that go into school can read. There's a significant amount of kids that are going to school and they can read and they can write. They go through the normal educational system. But there are a few kids out there that of a significant amount that need to be in the classroom versus selling bags or selling fruits, bananas, and anything, mangoes. They'll be on the side of the road selling those things, trying to earn a living, an honest living, to feed themselves and sometimes their families. So they have that burden at a very early age. And like I said, you got to applaud them, because their work ethic is innate for the most part. But yet and still, if we don't try to help channel and focus them and put them in the right areas, then they grow up in that line of work. And that's all they'll be exposed to for the rest of their lives for the most part.
How much help is there in Liberia and Sierra Leone for, like, within the business community? Are there charities that can go over there and help? Like, how easy is it for a kid to to get help if he really wants it?
There are several NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are providing some type of assistance when the country has been devastated over so long. There's so many other things that are invoked on the backside of things that it makes it so difficult to put your arms around helping. So there's always a need, although they have organizations that are helping. But I'll give you a classic example. My daughter was sick the other day, like a few days ago, and she was rushed to the hospital, and she received her care outside the hospital, sitting in a chair for over 24 hours. That's how bad things are. And those things need to be changed.
And that was in Africa, or was that here?
That was in Liberia.
Your daughter needed help.
Yes.
Oh, it was in Liberia. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, it's a big problem, and you're right. It's tough to wrap your arms around, but it's like they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. You just have to keep moving forward. Yeah. So tell us about writing your book then. So that book came out, The Audacity of Resilience, came out in June of 2020. How was that? Can you break through the framework of that book? Just give us a broad overview and how it was writing it.
Yeah, it was hard to write because I wanted something not too detailed, but something that hit the point right away. And I wanted something that was reader friendly and gave a snapshot, because here's the thing, the problem with Liberia and the war and the experiences is so small, so it touches everyone. And you also got to be careful to where you don't offend anybody in telling your story. That was the most challenging thing. So I had to go through so many iterations to make sure that no one person, because that was not the intent, not to hurt anybody or remind anybody of something that probably disturbed them. So I had to go through several iterations. But it all started when I was in the Air Force, and reporters in the Air Force will find out that I was from Liberia and understanding my story, and they'll do an article on me. So there's several articles out there when I was in the Air Force that kind of spoke to my story. So I was always reminded there's a story to be told. But the reason I write the book, and I'm looking forward to writing future books, is to help other folks. It's not for me per se, but to help inspire hope and greatness in others, because I'm no exception. I'm no exception to where I'm at. I think if I've come here because people before me have walked this path, and then hundreds and thousands after me is going to walk this journey of success as far as understanding where they come from, knowing where they're going, and understanding their responsibility to help and give back to us.
Now you said you were afraid that something that you wrote would offend somebody. Can you just get a little more specific on that? What do you mean by offending them? I'm just curious. What could you possibly say that would offend somebody?
If you tell your story, it's always a good, bad, and the ugly. And sometimes stating the ugly it has to do with somebody else. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that if you had a family, this is an example, and dad was abusive to mom, and you tell that story in part of your story, maybe siblings might get mad and say, don't talk about my dad like that in telling your story. And even with the tribal piece and the encounters and stuff like that, because as you move forward to being progressive, it's good to understand, not forget history, but at the same time, some things can invoke other things, and your intent could completely be erased because of how other people think and perceive things if they are not matured enough.
Right. Yeah, I could see how that would be a challenge. Man, Pittman, you've had so much to that you've experienced and so many lessons you've imparted. And any last few lessons you can just tell people, any last messages you have before we sign off here?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to share my story and also my insights. But what I would like to leave people with is I think our life itself is basically a simple life. But we as human beings, as individuals, tend to make it more complex just based on how mindset is our gateway to all things, good, bad, or indifferent. So I think it's important. Some of the things that I've incorporated in my life to make sure, and it helped me achieve success, is to infuse my mind with positive thought, positive outlooks, and embracing setbacks and challenges and rejection in a positive manner. So when we see them as opportunities, then we tend to conquer them. If we see them as just barriers, then they become barriers, and we remain on one side of those barriers. So just program your mind with positive thoughts and work hard. If that's a problem, look yourself in the mirror first. Always start with yourself, because the greatness that we all are uniquely carrying is embedded inside of us, not outside. So look nowhere else but on the inside.
Yeah, that's a great message. And surround yourself with people like you. I would say we need more Pittmans in the Air Force for sure. That's great. That's great, man. So how can people help? So are there any organizations that they can donate to, or either yours or overseas, or how can people help folks in Sierra Leone and Liberia and elsewhere? Any direction you would point?
At this moment, if I told you, then I will be telling you, I won't be telling the truth. And because I don't have a group or organization that right now that I will point my finger to. Everything I've been doing has been on an individual basis from my company. But there are resources out there. There's companies out there. Just do your research well on Liberia. And there's organizations out there that are providing help. Hopefully, in the next few months, I will have formulated something that will be more substantial and more credible to be able to help the efforts back there.
Okay. Fantastic. And then what about contacting you? If people want to get a hold of you for either guest speaking or to join your organization, how can they contact you?
Absolutely. I have a website. It's called sweatequityleadership.com. And my contact information is on there. And you can reach out to me through that. Again, it's sweatequityleadership.com. And the book itself is on Amazon.com if you want to get a copy of it, The Audacity of Resilience. So between all of those, my information is also in the book. And I can be reached via email or my phone number, or either through my website.
Cool. All right, Pittman Kennedy, man, you have an inspiring background. You've done an incredible amount, and keep going, man. Keep doing what you're doing, and we appreciate you coming on the show. So we'll talk to you soon, and we'll remain in contact, man. Good luck to you, okay?
Thank you so much, Greg. It's been a pleasure. Have a great weekend now. Don't eat too much more this weekend.
Too late, man. Too late. I'm already there. All right, Pittman, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
That is it, my friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, the best thing you can do is share it with your friends on social media and leave a 5-star rating with a friendly comment on your podcast app. Also visit gregcarino.com and subscribe to our new YouTube channel where you can watch clips of each episode. Finally, if you have an idea for the show, or if you would like to be on the show, please email us at gregcarino@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode.